Hey, what's up everybody? And today we're going to be talking about 2-hit confirms, what they are, and how you can practice them. And if you're an advanced player who's been around for a while, don't skip this video because I'm going to show you some more higher level concepts of how you can implement 2-hit confirms into your gameplay. Alright, so first and foremost, what's a 2-hit confirm? Well, a 2-hit confirm usually refers to you using your light attacks, and that's doing 2 light attacks and checking to see whether the attack is blocked or if the attack is hit. And if the attack is blocked, you're not going to want to follow up with a special move, because if you're just doing any light string into a special, you can see there, Ryu's -15. So on block, you don't want to push anything, but then on hit, you want to confirm that it hit and cancel into a special move to not only score damage, but to get a knockdown and to hopefully continue your pressure going forward. Now you can practice and use 2-hit confirms from lights with any character in the game, but for the purpose of this video, I'm going to be using Ryu. Feel free to use whatever character you want, but I'm going to be doing this from the perspective of Ryu today. Okay, so before I get into my talk about 2-hit confirms, I know some people in the comments are going to say, oh, but Chris, there's an offensive pressure practice guide that lets you kind of practice this in-game from the menu. It's true that this option exists and is pretty good for absolute beginners, but it doesn't really replicate what happens in a real match for more intermediate and advanced players. So unless you're 100% completely new to this game, I would avoid the default offensive pressure practice guide here in the game. Alright, so now that we got that over with, let's go over our basic settings. So you're going to want to go over to dummy settings in the option. You're going to set the dummy controls to dummy behavior, crouch or stand, doesn't matter, but let's just use crouch. Counter is standard, and block, you're going to want to set the dummy to block all for now. So first thing, if you're completely new to fighting games, you're just going to want to practice doing 2 hits. So 2 lights in a row. So for you, it can be like crouching light punch, or like crouching light punch, standing light punch, doesn't really matter. So we're going to go like light, light, light. So let's look at what happens after this. After you do 2 lights, you're left at -1, which means your turn is technically over, but it's not that bad. And you're left outside of throw range. So your pressure essentially ends because you can no longer put your opponent into a mix-up situation. And the reason why you can't do that is because you're outside of your throw range. If you just do a single light and your opponent still decides to block, you can still throw them. So your turn is over in terms of frames, but you can still apply pressure if your opponent just likes to block all day. But after 2 lights, you're outside of your throw range. So the only way you can apply a mix to your opponent is if you try to walk back in. Now that has some risk to it, but I'm going to go over that later. So for now, just know that after 2 lights, technically speaking, your turn is over. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the settings from block to block after first hit. Then I have a save state here where it leaves me right beside the opponent, Terry here. And all you're going to do is practice 2 hits into a basic combo ender. For Ryu, his best mid-screen combo ender for both knockdown and a balance of damage is going to be the light kicktatsu. So just like this, then you dash up once, you can do light Hoshogeki, that'll leave you +2. Or, you can just dash up once, walk in for a throw, dash in once, walk in for meaty jab pressure. So that's going to be our typical ender here. So you're just going to want to practice this a couple of times until you can do it, no problem. This should be not even a question of whether you can do it or not. So once you got that down, we're going to get into the real 2-hit confirm settings. So in my opinion, the best way to set up 2-hit confirm practicing in training mode is with the following settings. So under block, set the opponent to block all. Then in recording settings, in slot 1, you're going to record the dummy blocking for just a couple of frames. So like this, hold down back, then push start, and the recording is over. Then, in the block reversal options under reversal settings, in slot 1, you're going to go back to that recording you just made, turn it on, and make sure the delay is set to 0 frames and the count setting is set to 1. And I like this setting because if we look here, if the dummy blocks your first hit, they'll always block the second hit too. See that? Block the second hit. Okay, there they got hit twice. Always blocks the second hit. And I think that's much better than just the default random block setting. So then to practice 2-hit confirms, all you're going to do, you're going to walk up to your opponent, make a save state, and then all you're going to do is practice doing 2 lights. If you see your 2 lights hit, you're going to end with a special. In this case, it's going to be light kicktatsu. And if it's blocked, you're just going to stop for now. So here, I'm going to give it a try. Okay, got it. Block so I don't finish. No special move because it blocked. There, it hit. And then you're able to finish with your tatsu. If you can't do this and you're just kind of mashing in the game, this is really going to hold you back as a player. So if you can't consistently hit confirm in training mode, you're not going to be able to do it in your matches. So if this is something you haven't ever practiced before, I really recommend doing it. I think this is one of the most important things beginner and lower intermediate players can practice in training mode. This is going to help you so much more than just doing like typical combo practice. Once you can get this 10 times in a row, no problems, no drops, we're going to go on to the next part of 2-hit confirm training. So the settings I just showed you for practicing your 2-hit confirms are great for training your muscle memory, but there's one big problem, and that it doesn't really replicate what happens in a real match. So I'm going to show you how to recreate a 2-hit confirm situation that you can apply in a real match. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back into our dummy settings, set dummy behavior to crouch, and block to no block. Then, in wake up reversal settings, we're going to set slot 1 to a recording. So here in slot 5, I recorded Terry just holding down back. So there, that's the recording. We have it set. So slot 1, you're going to go into your recordings. Here at slot 5, you can make it any slot you want. Then in slot 2, you're going to pick do nothing. Then you're going to throw the opponent. And what happens here is this basically creates a random block when they get up with these settings. So here I'm pushing jabs. You see there, they got hit because that was the do nothing setting. Then here, the dummy blocked both of my hits. So this is how you can recreate it in a practical match, because knocking down your opponent with something like a throw in the corner is something that's going to happen a lot in Street Fighter 6. So once you have this set, just throw your opponent, do a meaty jab, and if it hits, follow up with any combo you want, and then if it blocks, you're just going to stop. So practice that 10 times both in the corner on this side and in the corner on this side until you can get it no problem every single time, and your 2-hit confirms in real practical situations are going to become much better. Now, having said that, it doesn't have to be in the corner. You can always do something like a typical knockdown, like Ryu's B&B mid-screen. You can go into this, dash, and then try to do 2-hit confirms from here. Really, you can set this up any way you like and just try to recreate it in a way that'll happen in your matches. Alright, so now we built the muscle memory to do 2-hit confirms, and we learned how to practice them in a practical way that we can apply directly to our matches. Now let's take a look at what happens if our 2 lights are blocked. What should we do after? So first, let's get training mode set up. Let's just set our opponent to block all, and then we're going to take off all of our other settings that we had in reversal settings. What you can do after 2 of your lights is blocked is going to really depend on both your character and the opponent's character that you're facing. But for the sake of this video, I'm going to show you some things that I consider to be really good steps and things to do after 2 lights are blocked. And of course, you can apply this with any character. So the first thing I think you should do, especially if you're playing a ranked match against someone you've never fought before, or if you're playing at an offline tournament against a new opponent in a 1-to-2, after your first 2 lights are blocked, just sit and guard. And the most important thing here is to watch your opponent. Now, the reason why I suggest doing just 2 lights into guarding is because it's a pretty much 0 risk, but also no reward option. And the reason why I tell you to watch your opponent is because what your opponent does after your 2 lights end is going to give us some information and allow us to make reads on what kind of opponent you're fighting. For example, a really defensive opponent is probably just going to sit there and block. Or a really defensive opponent might try to jump away to create some space. Aggressive opponents are probably going to challenge your minus frames by pushing something like their own crouching light punch or crouching medium punch, forcing you to block and also forcing you to choose buttons that are going to frame trap them if you want to continue your pressure. Then one more example, some really crazy players might just actually be mashing out a reversal, like an invulnerable reversal after your 2 lights. So just guarding allows you to kind of block that and to punish them when they land. So as I said before, the most important thing is to watch your opponent, because at this spacing, it's going to give you a lot of time to react to what your opponent does, especially if they go for a slower, higher risk option. So for example, if your opponent's the kind of person who's always jumping at you, as long as you're watching them and your reactions are on point, you're going to be able to anti-air them. So for example, something like this with a crosscut DP. One more really important thing about just stopping and watching your opponent is that until you get to more higher levels, like deeper into the MR or into like tournament level players, most people you're going to be fighting online have very one-dimensional defense. So they don't really change up their defensive options too much. So for example, let's say your opponent is always doing something like a jab after you do 2 attacks. If they do that the first time, chances are they're going to do it again the next time you put them into a blocked situation from your lights. So we can use this information to try to beat your opponent. But for example, if your opponent is always doing a jab right away after your own light strings, all you have to do is chain another light with a slight delay into it, and you'll be able to beat them. So just remember, when you're putting your opponent into these block strings and you're just holding down back to block, watch what they're doing, figure out what they're doing on defense, and then try to think of a way to beat that. Now, this is going to take experience and game knowledge, but if you've watched some of my other videos, I think you're going to know the answers as to what you can do to a lot of these counters. Another option that's really common from your opponents after blocking 2 lights is for them to walk up and throw you, because they're going to expect you to not do anything. Well, if you see them start to walk, you can react, or you can always just do a delayed jab of your own. This is generally pretty safe. So here, I'm just doing 2 jabs, and then I'm doing a delayed 3rd jab here. Boom. That'll counter hit them and stop them from walking in to throw you. And remember, if you do land the counter hit, you're always going to be able to link into another medium button as long as the frames match up, because you are getting a counter hit off that jab. Now, another really important thing here is that the delayed jab is really strong, because if your opponent goes for something like a medium punch right afterwards, you're going to be able to time it in a way where your jab won't get frame trapped by your opponent. So here, if I just mash it out, I'm probably going to get counter hit by my opponent. But if I delay it just enough right there, I'll be able to push the button, block my opponent's attack, but still be able to stop them from walking in with a throw with the exact same button press timing. So let's see if the dummy does it. There, I'm delaying my jab, not getting hit by the medium punch. Then if the dummy goes for a walk-in for the throw, which I hope the dummy goes for soon, there we go. I'll be able to stop both those options with one single option. So doing a delayed jab after your 2 block string pressure ends is a really strong option in this game. Now, your opponent can blow that up by also delaying their button timing or walking backwards into their own medium or heavy attack. But I mean, there's always a counter to your counter in this game, and that's where reads, mind games, and just generally understanding how the RPS in this game works. Let me show you one more defensive option select you can do after your block string ends, and this is going to be a more high level kind of thing. But let's check this out. Let's say your opponent is always doing like a crouching medium punch, and you want to blow this up with a perfect parry to get some really high damage reward off that. Now, this is great if you get it and you're right with your read. And the big problem with this is the risk reward isn't really in your favor, because if you go for that read parry and you get thrown, you're going to need over 2,000 damage for that. So your opponent can do a lot of damage just because your read was wrong. So this makes it pretty risky for you. Well, we can do an option select that kind of reduces the risk, but still gives us the reward of a perfect parry. Instead of just tapping the parry button here, what I want you to do is tap the parry button and do it into a drive rush. So it would look like this. See there, I got counter hit. The reason why this option select is really good is because if your timing is right on the medium punch, you'll still get a perfect parry. See? Then if my opponent goes for a throw instead, and I drive rush option select cancel out of it, I'm only going to get counter hit, not punish counter hit. So if you're going to be doing a parry after your block strings end, make sure you're always option selecting a forward drive rush. If they're pushing buttons after during your drive rush, you're still going to get hit out of it, you're still going to get thrown out of it, but you do get to mitigate the damage and kind of bring the risk reward of a perfect parry attempt more into your favor. So if you haven't tried that yet, definitely try it. It's really strong, and a ton of top level players have been using this lately in the tournament scene. So if you're a more higher ranked MR player and you haven't implemented that into your game yet, go for it, because it's kind of meta right now. So I hope that made learning how to do 2-hit confirms and how to apply them more clear to you guys. If you enjoyed this video and learned something, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel, because it helps support me as a content creator and lets me make more videos like this. And as always, thank you all so very much for watching. Until next time, take care.